what we're going to talk about today is kind of what's going on in P2P. And P2P, we mean procure to pay, but also you hear acronyms like order to invoice, anything just automating your inbound supply chain. RTP is another one, though we don't really get into requisitioning per se. What's changing in that environment and how to start building a business case to get there. So what's going on in the procure-to-pay industry? So first, a lot of companies are stuck and relying on decades-old methods that we're talking about here, mostly faxes, or in some cases, actual physical, postal mail. Ann was talking about that earlier in her presentation, that for invoicing, that's still the way they go, is suppliers are manually mailing, not even emailing or not even faxing, but mailing invoices to their procurement department. There's a lack of a shared vision, and this is kind of where a lot of organizations don't have that supply chain center of excellence, like what your group kind of works with. Lack of a champion. Some companies have started some processes to automate some direct suppliers, but they haven't really gone any further. Maybe they've automated their first 5 or 10, and then it's kind of stalled from there. So they're not really leveraging the IT investment that they've put in. They went ahead and built out these connections so we can get, send out orders, receive responses, get ship notices, but then they only automate with a few of their suppliers, and then the program kind of stalls. And then in the last 10 years, we've started to see a somewhat limited focus, but more on the requisitioning process and indirect spend. This is what most of the analysts talk about, is the indirect spend side of it. But there's most of the working capital gains that you can achieve are really with the direct material supply chain. So what are the things that we're seeing change? First of all, from an organization perspective, there's the rise of kind of a chief supply chain officer. There are these global service teams, and I don't mean like shared services, but I mean teams like a supply chain center of excellence that are looking across different functional silos within the organization, across purchasing, logistics, financing, and saying, how can we, with this big supply chain picture, how can we automate these processes and achieve certain goals that we have to save us money? But not just in this one point solution, or not just here, but looking across the system as a whole. And there's been a renewed focus on upstream opportunities. So a lot of companies start managing their customer service side, because the customer's always right. So that's where you got to throw your money at originally, is just kind of handling your customers. But there's so much opportunity on the inbound and the upstream side now, and it's becoming more and more critical to have visibility into that side to have an effective supply chain. So we're seeing a lot of organizational shifts, looking at new technologies, and technologies is really the next kind of shift we're seeing. There's the growth of business networks like Elimica, focused on building robust partner connections rather than kind of brittle EDI connections, or using faxes or whatever kind of methods you have in place today. SaaS-based solutions that can scale your network really fast. So you build a portal. We have a company, BSF was talking at our conference last year in Europe about their supplier management program using our SaaS portal, and they're looking to onboard 4,500 suppliers in a handful of years. So you can really kind of scale that network and leverage that IT investment on your side really quickly now. And we're seeing new technologies on the upstream side too around risk disruption. This is one of the things that, if you were in our morning conference, the intro that Rich Katz, our CTO, kind of covered some designs, or showed a design from, is our new kind of supply chain disruption solution that we're working on, so that you can identify a risk or an event that has occurred and tie that specifically to your supply chain, so that you can understand how world events are also impacting your supply chain. And from a competitive perspective, at Elimica, this is one of the fastest growing products here. So upstream visibility and visibility into your upstream logistics and visibility into your upstream supply are probably the fastest growing product suite we have at Elimica right now. You saw it with BSF talking last year at our European conference. You saw it this conference with P&G talking about managing their suppliers. You saw it with Ann Adams from Dow Agro presenting earlier on managing their inbound suppliers. There's a lot of activity right now where the companies in the process industries are really starting to focus on this. And this is something that the tire and rubber industry has done, for a decade. This is 10 years old in tire and rubber that they've already started these processes, but now we're really starting to see it gain traction in the chemical industries as well. So it all starts with automation of your network. So if you want to start getting real visibility, it all starts with just building the base kind of functionality, which is automating your supply base. So we can talk a little bit, and I'll skip through some of this in the interest of time. What are analysts saying? So you can see here that CPO's agenda, P2P study by Hackett Group, they're all saying that EDI isn't the dominant technology, that companies have to start working on building supplier networks, supplier portals. Supplier relationships are the second most significant way to contribute value to the supply chain. B2B collaboration is no longer optional. So the analyst community as a whole is also really starting to push this. So it's not just what we're seeing with momentum here from the conferences and what I've done talking to clients, but it's also something that's really getting recognized by the analyst community as well. So you see here, this is just kind of representing kind of how maybe a network maturity model, very lightweight that your company may go through. You start with fax and email, and actually there's a link prior to this, which is just regular mail, but I didn't include that. But in essence, you're trying to move data faster. Then you get to a business network like Illimica, and what you're trying to do is move clean data faster. And this goes to kind of the P&G discussion earlier. If you just implement EDI with all of your suppliers, in this case from the supplier management context, you're just going to push bad data faster. You're just going to cause problems to occur quicker. And maybe they'll be resolved quicker, but you're not cleaning up the data. You're not really improving the process in that regard. Business networks also link cross-partner process data. So, we have companies that are working with Illimica to not just automate their supplier signals, but also tie in ocean freight signals if the supply is coming from another continent overseas, so that they know not only that the order has shipped. That's kind of phase one, but also knowing that the order has left. Hit this port, and then it's departed this port, then arrived at this port, and is now out gate and in transit inland for the final leg. Business networks are also about scalability, being able to leverage that individual connection you have to us, and being able to quickly kind of scale out your network, like we talked about with the SaaS portal, but also with the way that we've kind of updated our 2.0 integration platform to make integration simpler. And then you get to this next kind of level that I'm just calling the network nervous system, but it's about opening new communication channels, looking at alternative ways of getting information, alternative data feeds, and understanding contextually how those apply to your network. So this is where we talk about things like big data. And we have companies that we're working with that are actively kind of at this level. They've gone through the business network, they've automated all of their upstream processes, and now we're getting to a point where we want to start getting big data feeds and applying that to their network. And that's where this the kind of genesis of this new risk and disruption management project has come from. So most of the companies, unfortunately, that we talk to are around here on this kind of line. I don't know where your individual company may be, but in some cases, you might even be doing some stuff like by mail, like we talked about here, and be actually not even be as far across this line as we're talking about. But it's good that you're here at least, and it's good that you're talking to us, because that means that you're trying to understand how to get down this line. And that's what we'll talk about from a business case perspective. So how do I get there? So first, and a lot of my work kind of here has already been done for me by the P&G presentation from Anne-Marie, by Ann Adams' presentation, even by Dorothy Alonzo, which was focused on customer management, but those same benefits of automation and those same change management processes are applied to the upstream as well as the downstream supply chain. So first, you need to have someone in your company that is an agent of change. And this doesn't have to be an individual. This could be a center of excellence. This could be some group that's just looking at our processes, trying to understand what's best for our company, has approval from the executive team, and is willing to challenge the status quo. Because change management is always going to be the biggest problem you have. People don't want to change, like we just saw talking about habituation, fighting habituation. That's organizational inertia. There's a big change management effort that goes into any kind of project, with the IT group, with the procurement group, with the logistics group, with finance, with everyone. You gotta build that team. You've got to give them the resources they need from all the different groups that are going to participate in the initiative. And the earlier you can get different groups involved, the better, because when it comes to the change management effort later on, those resources from finance who have participated in this effort from the beginning are going to have credibility when they're trying to push this to the rest of the finance team and explain this to the rest of the finance team. They're also going to be able to give you insight into how best to craft that message for the finance team or for the purchasing team or for the plant operations team. So the earlier you can involve those people, the better the better it's going to be for you, because they'll kind of become your champions with those individual groups, and they'll buy in because they understand the business case. They've been participating in creating that business case. So then let's start building the business case. So we're going to look at some different metrics, purchasing metrics, full-time equivalents per PO line, per shipment, percentage of orders requiring intervention, requiring rush transportation, so on and so forth. I won't call these out each individually, and then we're going to look at some for invoicing metrics as well. And with these metrics, I'm just going to create a sample company. So in this case, I created a sample company that has $5 billion in spend across 150,000 purchase order lines. You can see their average inventory is $833 million, giving them about 6 days of inventory turnover. They're currently paying about 80% of their invoices on time. They got 30 people just working on processing orders and shipments, and 50 people working on invoices. And those people are paid roughly $40 an hour, and cost of capital assumption of 5%. And these calculators we're going to make available, that I'm using here, we're going to make them available on our website. And of course, this whole presentation will be available on our website as well. So if you put that into your handy-dandy calculator here, and you look at things like productivity gains. So first, we're focused on labor savings, human capital productivity, whatever you want to call it, minutes saved per order response. So if you were here for Ann's presentation a little earlier, you would have seen that they're actually showing 6 to 10 minutes saved just from automating the order response. And I'm showing, in this case, 5 minutes. But you can see that each minute saved at this, based on the number that I put in here, is saving you $100,000 in people. That's almost an FTE for every minute you can save on an order response in this case. ASN processing. So then you add the shipment. You save another 10 minutes for every shipment that you're processing. You save another hour, and I put that 4% of your orders or your shipments have a data quality issue that you need to resolve. So that takes a little bit of extra time. 1% of those shipments require some sort of expedition because of bad data, most likely, and you're able to save that time as well. And then we go down into what does it cost every time one of those shipments is delayed or expedited. I put in here $3,000 per error and 1% occurrence, but that number could be much larger. If there's an ocean freight container, for example, that you're shipping, and you've got to air freight it, that's 70, 80 grand right there just in that one shipment. If you've got to move something that fast, and that happens a lot, especially these days with supply capacity constraints, with events occurring, like we talked about the port explosion in Tianjin. If you don't have visibility in your supply chain, it can be real expensive to expedite shipments. And then also I assumed inventory turn improvement. So based on just the fact that you have this improved visibility into your supply chain, you know when your shipments are coming, you know where they are, you know that suppliers have acknowledged your orders, that they're receiving your orders. Because of that improved visibility, you're able to reduce your inventory turns by a quarter turn, and just assume a working capital gain there. Now, all of these numbers at the bottom here, the ones around operational and working capital improvements, those are put at a 5% cost of capital. So the actual number is 20 times this. But your finance guy isn't going to let you just take that number and say, oh, we're improving that off the books. They're going to say, well, what's the opportunity cost for that investment? And that's where you come to these numbers of around 200 grand and 1.6 million here. And then we do the same thing for invoices. So you see the same stuff here. 15 minutes for invoice process, payment processing, data quality issues. I also increased so invoice discounts. You're able to capture 4.5% more of the invoice discounts that are offered to you as a company. From a working capital improvement, you're able to improve your days payable outstanding and your on-time payment those are not actually mutually exclusive items. So you can improve your on-time payment because you have visibility into your invoices. All that's automated. The clock starts immediately when you get the invoice, electronically. You can improve paying that on time because of that better visibility that you have, and invoices aren't sitting on someone's desk and you haven't processed them until after they're already due. But at the same time, through that visibility, you can improve your days payable outstanding by making sure that you pay on the due date, so that you're not paying your invoices early. So we have a small days payable outstanding increase of 1 day on 80% of the invoices that you're paying, and an on-time payment improvement of a total of 10%. So earlier in this scenario, we said that this hypothetical company was paying 80% of their invoices on time. Now we're saying they're going to get to 90%, and that improvement alone would be $500,000. So what does all that end up being? So in this particular business case, we've saved about a little under $8 million. Total savings per PO, $25, $28, or $27 per invoice. You can see that's consistent with analyst studies. I show here a business case that Aberdeen put together, where they're a little bit higher, about $10 higher per order and per invoice process. So this is a little bit more conservative maybe than the numbers they came up with. You can see it's also consistent with the numbers that Ann was putting out in her presentation earlier today. And if you break it out from a working capital perspective, of that $7.9 million, 3.2 is working capital, which is $13 per PO and $850 per invoice, and $4.7 million was human capital. And truthfully, depending on how your organization works, you're not just gonna fire the 23 people and the 36 people. You're not just going to fire 59 people necessarily. There may be a reduction in headcount, as those departments don't need all those people processing orders and processing invoices anymore. But the truth is, you got to look at it like the opportunity cost of those people. Now, when you as an organization grow, so I think when Dow Agro was presenting earlier, she showed how they had gone from, I think, 50,000 POs to 150,000 POs in just the last few years. As that organization has grown, they wouldn't need more people because the people are more efficient. So you're not going to necessarily lose people, but you're not going to have to hire new people when you grow. You're going to be able to put people in working on other initiatives. So all those initiatives that you couldn't do because you didn't have the time, you didn't have the resources, well, now you have the time and resources for those people to start working on those projects. And you may reduce headcount to some extent. But this number, that 4.7 million, may not be a direct, hey, we're just going to cut this out. But it is an opportunity cost of those people and of their talent to work on things other than processing orders and invoices. And then there are other benefits. We talk about being a better customer, getting priority from your supplier. A lot of the focus today and some of the presentations has been around capacity constraints. And that exists not only in the trucking industry, but that also exists in the supplier and the raw materials industries as well. And if you're a better, customer to your suppliers, you're gonna get preference when it comes to those times where capacity is an issue, and they're gonna prioritize you, and they're gonna say, hey, this company has always been good to us. They've automated all these processes with us. They've paid all of their invoices on time. This is a very strategic account for us. We want to make sure that we prioritize them when there are issues. You're going to get better visibility into what's happening downstream. So if you know what's happening in your upstream supply chain, you understand what's available to promise better. You understand what you can do for your customers better, and you can increase your customer service levels. You can understand the total cost of ownership. You can look and understand which suppliers are actually causing you the problems with their lack of responses and ship notices. You standardize your processes. These are all things that have been talked about by Lonza today, by P&G today, by Dow Agro today. Digitization, eliminating paper, and freeing up IT resources. So a lot of companies that we talk to might have built out 10 individual point connections to their top 10 suppliers and then kind of stopped there. Well, they're managing those 10 connections with who knows what different standards that they're using, and they're making IT kind of their core competency as a company. And some of them have portals where they have a portal that they implemented through SAP, or maybe some software that they built on top of it, and it's really not what their company should be focusing on. It's not, the core competence of their business. So now, if you kind of put that out to a business network like Elimica, then you can kind of really focus from an IT perspective on initiatives that make sense for you as a company. But you do have to be careful. So this is, I'll leave this with a word of caution. You do have to be careful before choosing a partner to work with. So this is a model, a supplier network transaction fee model based on a very popular company that works in this space. And I just plugged in some of the numbers from our sample business case, and I just assumed a number of 4,000 suppliers. We put the total annual spend, 5,150,000 invoices. And if you look at the total cost to the system when you plug this in, when you plug those numbers into that particular model, where the suppliers are charged a percentage of the value transacting through the system, the total cost of the system is $8 million. The total benefits to the system was $7.9 million, to you at least as the customer, and you're going to add this supply chain tax of $8 million, and in that case, that model may not really work out for you. And we see a lot of companies that implement a model like this, and they just get immediately charged back in their invoice. They'll see, hey, network transaction fee is included as part of the invoice. This is what we were charged by the vendor in this case, and we're going to charge it right back to you. So you just have to be careful when you're choosing a provider, when you're choosing, how to go about this automation process, that you're doing something that makes sense for both you as a buyer and for your suppliers. So that both companies are getting value out of the process, and both companies are getting aren't being you're not the total cost implemented onto the system isn't something that's such a burden that it's not worth it.